out so much damage in the early game. But the first phase of bans will be coming through from the side of Bren Esports. We do see the Black Feather, classic ban, and from the side of E8, Lance ban.
Yeah, Arden pick, pretty standard. It's Bren Esports like to pick Arden because he's a strong captain. He's in the meta quite well. If you get that echo on the gauntlet, it's so annoying to try and play against that. It's really hard as a team to play correctly against double gauntlet because maybe someone stuck inside between two walls, someone stuck inside and someone stuck outside everything. You don't really know what to do. You don't know even if you've got a Lyra with an arcane passage, you don't know where to go, who to help, and when to crucible. And so that is really annoying to play against. Grace, another interesting pick actually, because we've seen much more Lyra, Catherine, and other captains as opposed to Grace, but she's been first picked, and the Kestrel ban, that's probably a ban away from Bren Esports. Elite 8 don't want to play the Kestrel. They have the next picks. They could have picked it themselves. Don't want to play it, and it's really annoying to play against.
And as for Grace, as a pickup, we've seen Elite 8 coming out with Grace in the previous patch itself. And although in this particular patch, Grace hasn't quite been favored, but we did see Impunity pulling it out and definitely help change the tides of battle. So I kind of do understand the pickup coming through from Elite 8. However, the second ban coming out from Bren Esports, that Vox, Bren Esports is definitely respecting Vox in 2.9.1. Else, why would you even ban a Vox? I mean, we saw Impunity coming through, and Impunity just played so strong. Def Q on that Vox was just insane. But even as a blind ban, Vox is just not worthy at this point in time as compared to the other heroes that are out there, like Rhyme. Rhyme is a very good ban now. Reza maybe not Reza, maybe not Reza, but maybe the Batiste against Elite 8.
I'm very surprised by this Idris second pick on B-side by Elite 8. We haven't seen much Idris at all being played, being banned. But Elite 8 have decided to just first pick it, not knowing any comps that Bren Esports are going for. They're probably going to go with a CP Idris. We might even see Weapon. I've seen a little bit of Weapon Idris come back into the meta with Assassins being stronger. So Weapon Idris obviously synergizes as well with Assassins because he basically isn't an Assassin himself. Now, what Bren Esports can return this with, they could do a Weapon Duel. They're going to go another Alpha. Bren Esports going, yeah, that worked really well for Impunity last game. Let's go for Alpha. She seems OP this patch, so interesting what Alpha's going to build. We're probably going to see the Alpha Shock into Dragon's Eye with defense up from there, but you never know. Maybe we'll see a Clockwork on this time in Alpha. Maybe we'll see Broken Myth as opposed to Dragon's Eye. Really interesting what that's going to go with. And the last laner, obviously Vox out the table, as quite a lot of three of the meta laners are off the fold. Black Feather, Vox, Kestrel. So I said Jewel could work. Glaive could work really well against the Idris, and I'm interested in what Bren Esports decided last pick.
Pato. There you have it. A Pato coming through from Bren Esports. And while you're actually going through all the laners that Bren Esports can actually pick up, in my head I was thinking Baron Pato, definitely Pato. There you go. And then we do see a Pato coming through from Bren Esports. They are bringing back 2.8. On to 2.9. We've seen a couple of Pato pickups here and there in challenges, but overall, I personally don't think that Pato is a good hero now. I think she's been reverted back to where she stems from. And
she didn't really get much of a change to her weapon power path, really. I mean, the health changes were kind of annoying to Weapon Petal, but it's going to be a Weapon Petal lane, which will work against this Weapon Idris quite well. Weapon Idris will be able to dive in pretty effectively against the Petal, but once it gets towards mid to late game, once Petal gets 2 items, Soul Blade, first Tornado Trigger, it's going to be very hard for Elite 8 to try and kite away from this. The Sky pick is, I guess, kind of an Alpha counter. I would have much preferred to see a Cruel or a Rhyme. Rhyme is fantastic against Alpha. Not being banned, it's still available. And so I think that would have been a much better pick from Elite 8 to go with that, because Sky can be Alpha if you play it well, but with an Arden, Alpha can just keep up, can catch up to the Sky, and it's going to be really tough for Elite 8.
Yep, and I don't know. Looking at the team comp coming through from both teams, I want to say Elite 8 team comp definitely look more robust, look a little more, meta. But overall, equally from both teams, they picked out equally very not meta heroes in 2.9.1. We have a Petal out of the blue, although that is what Bren Esports like to play. And then we have an Idris and Grace coming through from Elite 8. But of course, Grace and Idris works very well together because Idris really wants to jump into the back lines and Grace can just provide those divine intervention. And Grace can just help out, indirectly or directly with those benediction or retributions, basic attacks. And grants that holy shield and all the good things, and Grace can bring to the table. But Idris pickup going up against an Arden, is just immediately locked in. So it is quite questionable, like you mentioned earlier on. But coming out from Bren Esports, that Petal pickup, I don't know. I mean, I'm at a loss.
You wanted it. You wanted the Petal pickup.
I mean, it's quite sensible for Bren Esports to bring out a Petal. I mean, Mr. Jim is just so very comfortable on it. Sync one as well. At the end of it all, looking at the entire roster, there are not much weapon carries available. And the side of Bren Esports usually would settle for 2 only 2. And that'll be Baron, if not, then Petal. So I'm just guessing Petal for, just to throw it out there. I didn't quite expect it to be brought out at all.
Yeah, Baron is not actually a bad pick this patch. He can do loads of damage. If you let Baron scale up and don't snowball him, then he's pretty much unkillable because he'll kill you first with 700 crit, despite the fact you've got a metal jacket. So I think Baron could have been a pick, but it's much safer to go with the Petal. He scales up quicker, has a bit longer range, and has more mobility really than Baron with higher movement speed and with the trampoline. So I think it does make sense to go with it. Maybe they're more comfortable as well with that massive attack speed weapon Petal you can get. So there is going to be Pew Pew Petal. That's very exciting. I'm going to see. That's the most fun skin to watch.
Did you just say Pew Pew Petal?
Pew Pew Petal. That's the technical name for Legendary Bug Petal. Because when Petal makes those basic attacks, it goes pew pew as if it's. I think Ringo says that. Maybe Gwen, but it's pretty nice. Nice Petal skin. And I think early game rotations are going to be pretty similar from both these teams. No one's going to go too aggressive. Alpha level 1 is so much worse than level 2. I think they're going to start their backs together. We might see Elite 8 go a bit aggressive with the Grace, but I don't think so.
I mean, coming into this game itself, it is quite a gamble, if I were to say anything, because it is just down to just execution of team comp and who can just come out on top, whether or not Petal will be allowed to farm up, and whether or not there's too many variables to count, right? Let's imagine this perfect scenario where Official Hind can just get over, all those minions and just get on top of Petal, for barrage, and Petal will just very quickly goes down. That way, okay. Right? Okay, my bad, because I totally forgot. I thought it was, I'm casting alongside Minimizer. But of course, for this game, I will be talking about this entire weird game with I Request a Duo. So, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, and it looks like I'm here just in time to catch out the first fight. As we see the Alpha going in with the Prime Directive and trying to land those core charges, we see Mr. Jim and Alpha already with those level 2s, and they're going to be able to pick up the first blood for themselves. Guessing going fairly low, however, needs to be careful. Grace going to jump in there, but gets caught out and punished for it. Prime Directive going to land, and Mr. Jim on this weapon power pill. It's instantly paying off for the side of Bren Esports, picking up the double kill to start the game with. So, I heard you guys throughout the draft, and you were just saying it's going to be this weapon power pedal because why not? I'm surprised because it definitely was something that was working out for them in the previous patch, but they've come into this patch in the new 2.9. There's been a lot of changes. We haven't seen Bren Esports just yet, so this is our first sighting of them into Split 2 at least, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out. Towards, especially throughout the whole game, whether those were just some early good kills or, Bren Esports being so comfortable on this weapon power pedal that they'll make it work no matter what.
Yep, and I've mentioned this before in the current patch itself, or if I remember correctly, I did mention this before, and another fight will just break out.
Yep, and we see Arden going to be able to pick up the kill onto Grace, of course, with the help of Sync 1 on that Alpha there, but they're just going to chase Sky back into a lane. I'm not sure. It looks like Idris will be able to protect them. Official Hein able to back off, but I was just looking at the overall kind of team comps we got going on here, because we have seen a similar team comp on the side of Elite 8 as of yesterday, but it was, instead of the Idris pickup, it was a Black Feather, and that was working out really well against a team comp that was a bit strange, kind of like this one, when you consider things being strange. I mean, they had the Alpha, they had the Arden, but they had a Rona instead, and I think that's the difference here. That's not full engage, but it's more balanced. You have that backliner with Petal, but Petal can also chase. And it might work out more so for them, because you can see as Guessing getting knocked up by that Holy Nova, it's really how it falls into the kit of Grace being a very good defense hero and offense, just opening up those opportunities for their carries to get onto the enemy. And meanwhile, throughout that match, it's like the question of, you know, is Sky going to be good against Alpha? But I think more or less we look at it in a team comp sense. And as long as Han Jaegers is there on that Grace, you know, I think Sky, for the most part, can just jump around the fight freely, and the focus of Bren Esports is elsewhere.
Yep, and I think I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, I actually did mention this in the previous patch in 2.8, that Pato experiences a very, very weird power spike, but Synquan going down there.
Sync1 going to get put into the infinite reboot stage, but Anime Save Me very low in the backline. Sync1 is going to use Prime Directive onto Official Hein, but meanwhile, Han Jaeger's picking up the kill onto Mr. Jim. So they need to be a bit more careful there. Guessing may have not had the Vanguard just in time, and that's the thing. They've got to kind of really work on their synergy and on their engages, because early on, although you can play more aggressively and build more aggressively with that Arden on your team, you also need to be careful about it. You talked about in the previous match between Impunity and Renegades about aggression and controlled aggression, and I think that's something that applies here in this game too.
Yep, and to continue on the point that I really wanted to continue since just now, please, no more fight, please. But you know, the point that I really wanted to make was that Pato, if I remember correctly, has got this very weird power spike. She has a very good early game, she falls off in the mid game, and then she kind of gets like kinda-ish strong in the late game after she completes two more Tyrant's Monica, if not two more Tornado Trigger. But you know, coming into the mid game, Pato will just be very, very weak and will just be trumped by Official Hein on the Sky, definitely, because the Minions will go down, you know, almost immediately after a single tick or two ticks of all barrages, and then you have just Guessing or the Sync1 just be the only one jumping through in. So if Sync1 jumps in and all three members of Elite 8 just targets and locks Sync1 down on the Alpha, then it will be quite an easy game for, you know, Elite 8 to get past in that mid game. Because as we all know, Official Hein on the Sky, we have Han Jaeger on that Idris. They kind of start soaring and they become better in that mid game. So they will try to oppress Pato then, and Pato kind of wear off then until Pato gets that Tornado Trigger. If not, then, you know, double Tyrant's Monaco before Pato will be relevant again. So that is one thing maybe Elite 8 will do and try to just take advantage of in the early game, in the mid game, sorry.
Yep, and Han Jaegers with that Shroud Step there, dodging out the Prime Directive, and now we see a bit of aggression coming out from the side of Elite 8 as Han Jaeger's going to Shimmer Strike in there, but he does force out the Fountain from his own team to save his life so he can escape. A bit of a mistake, noticing that going in quite deep to the enemy lines is not the play you want to be making. Instead, try play more reactionary and bait the side of Bren Esports in and leave it up to Sky to land that poke from afar. But right now, Elite 8 do want to be the aggressors, and they're going to try continue with it. There's still the Fountain already used on the side of Bren Esports, but meanwhile, it's going to be the Sky falling to Petal. It's just the range on Petal so ridiculous, and when you make that a weapon power Petal, when you make it the pew pew weapon power pedal especially, that is more dangerous than ever. As we see Sync 1 gets the Vanguard, it's enough to get them the kill onto the Idris after the reboot. And Anime Save Me needs to be careful of Mr. Jim on this pedal, who's doing so much work as they push into this turret. It looks like Sky will be back up in lane to just help defend this first turret, not wanting to let it fall so early, as Idris only making out the base at the moment. But Sync 1 gonna jump in once again, and they managed to pick up the kill thanks to the Vanguard that's able to get them out of turret safely, even going in without the infinite reboot. And that's just the kind of aggression I talked about playing alongside Arden allows you to do. And we do see Elite 8 trying to chase them down. There's going to be the Fountain used on the side of Bren Esports, and they might be able to get the kills out of it. Sync 1 able to pick up the Sky, does get the infinite reboot just in time, but Hunjagers was able to pick up that kill onto Mr. Jim once again. So it looks like still in a 1v1 situation, Mr. Jim is going to lose out to this Idris.
Very good aggression coming out from Bren Esports there, but a return turret taking might just be coming out from Elite 8. Whether or not they have got the damage, they have got the wave to just push into this turret will be another topic of discussion, and apparently they do.
Ooh, and there's going to be the gauntlet coming out from Guessing on that Arden, but you're right, a lot of aggression from both teams here, especially Elite 8 trying to look for that return turret. Now they are going to be holding their lane safely as we see Mr. Jim rotating back down with Sync 1 into the jungle. So no further aggression coming out from the side of Bren Esports just yet. And Idris picking up that tension bow as the second item alongside of that Soul Blade they already had. So going to be doing a lot of damage, a lot of burst damage, especially what they're looking for. Trying to get into those key opportune moments when Arden doesn't have that Vanguard up. And Alpha, meanwhile, picking up that Dragon's Eye, which no reason not to. Just such a good item right now, especially on heroes like Alpha who want to go into the fight and stay in it. But they are leaving Guessing up alone to defend this turret, and it's going to go down. Meanwhile, Sync 1 and Mr. Jim going to pick up that gold miner. So collecting 400 gold, but losing 300 per member over to the enemy team by losing that objective as well. I don't know if it's the right play to make, because I think losing an objective like the first turret there does give up a bit of ground, and it opens up Elite 8 to play even more aggressive and rotate that much more as a team.
I mean, if you think about it and you look over at the health of Elite 8's turret, it will be relatively easy for Mr. Jim to just, push in with the minions, push in with the wave, and just take down that first turret very, very quickly. So giving up the first turret to take the gold mine, for me personally, looking at a gold point, it's definitely very, very worth it. But, like you mentioned, for the, for the control-wise of the jungle, of the game, it will not be worth it. But Bren Esports definitely have to wait for their power spikes to come through, or for Mr. Jim's power spike to come through. Mr. Jim now already has got a Soul Blade into double tornado trigger. So very good attack speed, and on top of that has that overdrive onto that of the trampoline now. So very long range, very good attack speed, and can definitely just put out a lot of damage if constantly protected. And as mentioned, Sync 1 just jumping into the front line forces the Elite 8 to just concentrate their firepower onto Sync 1.
There's going to be the death from above as the engage coming out from the side of Elite 8, and Hunjager is going to jump onto that backline with the Shimmer Strike, but getting taken down instantly by Mr. Jim. Just gets kited out. Sync 1 actually going to be the one to pick up the kill, going in for the double kill onto the Sky, diving under that turret. Has the Vanguard just so tanky in this fight, putting out so much damage as well. And Bren Esports instantly going to make up for previously losing that turret, as you said, able to really quickly pick up that first turret, and it looks like they'll even be able to get a second one here as Mr. Jim clearing out the wave, pushing in with those A-Stub minions, and they're going to get a Crystal Sentry out of this one. So Bren Esports doing a bit of a risky play before. You're right, in terms of the gold economy, it really pushed them forwards that bit more than they were before, and now we see that it's really paying off, as they're seeing it 28.2k gold over to 23.5, and it's going to mean that they took that risk of losing a certain amount of the map control, but they're going to be able to gain it back now gradually as they've taken out the second turret and that Crystal Sentry there.
Yep, and I apologize. Like, I sincerely apologize. Mr. Jim now is working towards the Tyrant Monaco. If not, then no, stop it. Do not do that anymore. I request Duo, do not do that to me. But Bren Esports is definitely just pushing the advantage now, right? Mr. Jim, I mentioned before, has to have that double tornado trigger to be able to put out that good enough damage, right? Good enough damage, and they basically moved late game into that of mid game by hyper farming Mr. Jim. Looking over at Sync1 sitting at 55 CS, and then we have Mr. Jim at 141 CS at 12 minutes in, and the gold miner definitely did help Bren Esports. And I didn't mention before, if any team were to come out with interesting team comps, it will be Bren Esports, and they will be the ones to be able to pull it off. Now, Anime Save Me actually missing that steal, Gauntlet being thrown down.
Yeah, there's going to be the Gauntlet. Meanwhile, Official Hein on that backline gets taken out instantly, and soon to fall is going to be Jaegers, followed by Anime Save Me. Bren Esports just cleaning through, proving that this weapon power comp still works. But even more so, we've talked about how are Bren going to be able to play this new patch, and they're definitely making good use of it. They're playing meta heroes like this Alpha at the moment, and Arden, just always being a great support pick, but very much so in this current meta, we've seen him be the first pick for quite a lot of times. So I think in that sense that Bren Esports show their understanding, show why they're currently third on the table in points, and have a very good chance to put up a fight against those teams like Renegades and Impunity. So I'm very excited to see just how well, whether it's only this match in the draft or what we'll see into the second match between these two teams, because right now Bren Esports looking so good. But just a thought that was brought up, or a statistic, that there's a change on the turret gold down to 200 gold for this current patch, I believe. So that does mean losing out that turret isn't as bad when you're going to be able to take the gold mine. I mean, gold mine giving out 400 gold to each member, over to the 200, you're still gaining double for each person. So definitely a big lead there. And when Bren Esports were just able to come back and take so much more from that one single loss, I think is definitely worth the risk and reward. And now it's put them in this state where they're just going into fights with so much confidence. Guessing, however, going to have the Gauntlet up in 1 more second. They don't need it. They're going to take down Grace instantly. Hun Jaeger's going down with a boom. This Alpha just so strong, using the Echo on the Gauntlet, but you're not going to need it. There's the Ace, and they're already pushing into the enemy base before Kraken is even up here. They might even get the game before it's up, and it looks like they're going for the crystal. Bren Esports looking to finish this one out, and they do. They get the crystal right before Kraken gets on the fold. Not even needed in this match. And wow, what a match to first see Bren Esports in the new split.
Well, I mean, Bren Esports weren't present yesterday, but I was expecting a lot coming out from Bren Esports. Just last split, the final week of last split, they actually beat Impunity 2-0. I know a lot of Impunity fanboys will be telling me, do not keep mentioning that. It's a loss, we accept that, but we have to move on. But no, because honestly, Impunity, one of the top dogs in Vainglory.